Okay, so good morning to everyone. I'm super happy to have each one of you again in another one of our El Programa session. In this case, we have a friend of the house that it's his second opportunity with us, which is Jack Greco from connecting again from the United States. He is an operator turned angel turned VC. And last year we had a very interesting conversation where we actually were able to understand a little bit more about his think process. So the purpose of this call is actually to get in your brain, Jack, again, and understand like how you think, and if any, give advices to our founders so that they can better approach an angel, a VC, and why it's different actually. That's on one end. I'm going to let you present yourself because there's a lot of richness in how you turn out to where you are. Now, before we do that, considering that this time we have a more intimate space with our founders, I'm going to let them introduce themselves briefly so you understand where they're coming from. I mean, what their startups are doing. I think that will enrich in the conversation as well. So, having that said, I'm gonna give the word to Sebastian from Bucks Up.
Cool.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hi, Jack. Thank you for the space. The name of our company is Bucks Up. We are a B2B SaaS fintech, and we aim to increase the ROI per customer and merchant at a bank by organizing, cleaning their transactional data in real time through a software. So once again, thank you. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about how the investment space is right now. I think it's an interesting.
When you say cleaning, is that like is that because it needs some kind of data scrubbing that's maybe done manually or not at all right now?
Yeah, so there's a couple of problems there. Today in Latin America, we're seeing that the transactional data is flowing from, or is coming in from different sources.
Yep.
It can come in from a processor, it can come from a bank, it can come from a fintech. So the first task is kind of putting everything together into a data pool. Then we eliminate the duplicates. We clean basically the raw transactions, which they don't necessarily have a category. There's a lot of work there to do. So we have that, clean for the bank to take opportunity on that data.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Amazing. Now I would like to give the word to Stephanie Bort from Comi.
Hi, thank you. So I'm part of Comi. I'm actually the CEO, and what we do at Comi is we use data and use data and AI to help both online sellers and publishers increase their revenue through product recommendation content.
Nice to meet you. Are you using AI at all in what you're doing, or is it still very much a manual process?
No, we are using AI. So a lot of what we do is like the content generation, so we can increase the SEO traffic. And so we are using artificial intelligence to both create SEO content and create part of the product recommendations.
And are you concentrating on any specific industry with that? Like a lot of these like neural models that I've seen are taking like, let's say ChatGPT or something like that, which is kind of a liar and dumb and like, it compounds information, but it's not always correct. And so
it's not what?
Well, like with a bunch of the AI that I've seen, that's not like open source AI platforms. I've seen that when like what people are doing is they're saying, hey, look, there's the ability to generate meaningful content, right? There's a way and a structure to, let's say, build SEO. So I'm using open source, platforms to potentially do that. And my special sauce, what makes this a business, is I'm doing it specifically for, like I just met with some people in Cincinnati, Ohio. They're doing it specifically for technical documentation around scientific evidence and literature. So like AI can't write a paper on how, Hershey's, like the chocolate company, has moved away from cane sugar and how that's, the negative impacts of it on a technical level, because it doesn't have that level of detail. but it is very competent in being able to be like, here are the facts, being able to pull information from different people and kind of put it all in one place. So it kind of acts like what I used to do, which was like run around and talk to like 5 different, experts in an area, and then try to compile like a technical article on something, right? Like it's more of gathering information and sewing it together than it is coming up with novel content on its own. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, this is not a world I know a ton about. So I'm just trying to make sure exactly what it is that you do, because I feel like there are a lot of people using AI to create SEO related content broadly, and I don't know, like, I guess I'm trying to look for your edge.
Yeah, sure, I can explain. So what we're doing different, our secret sauce is basically how we're combining data with AI. And we're doing this in 2 different ways. So the first way is we're using scrappers to go into the different websites that we work with, from which we recommend products. And we're able to pull data on like their most recent products that went on sale. We're pull data on recently added products. And we also, because we work mostly through affiliate, we're able to see all the sales that were generated historically at a product level. So we can see what's selling well. And we use the data to sort of feed into the AI what products should be recommended. And the other way we use data is we are looking at SEO data to see, the thing is like product recommendations in Latin America right now are pretty much inexistent. Like I know it's a very mature market in the US, but it's not in Latin America. So we're looking at the data to find like those niches where you can easily rank higher. So we use that data to figure out what to write about, but then we combine that with looking at like the articles in the US that are placing higher, that come up like the first one, and we're able to use their outline to generate our own content. Like we don't copy the content, we just see what works and use that ourselves. So that's like those 2 things are our secret sauce.
Cool, thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you very much. Now I would like to give the word to Ronnie Horvath from Exponential.
Morning, Jack. Thank you for your time. Great meeting you. So we built a product, it's called X Monitoring. It's designed to drastically reduce the risk of downtime in critical operations. And we do so by monitoring in real time both power and cooling equipment. Right now, the product converges both hardware, well, not both, but hardware, platform on the cloud, and the IoT connectivity. So we can connect to any hardware, any unit, doesn't matter the manufacturer or the time it's been installed. And we don't use the customer's network. We use obviously the cell phone supplier. And we're at the point where we're integrating machine learning and AI into our platform. So we eventually can transform the industry from being reactive to being predictive.
So that would mean if I ran like a portion of an IT center at a large corporation, I would get preemptively a text or an email saying, hey, you're at high risk of something, to be able to allow you, it enables them with the information to be proactive in terms of a process to follow okay, cool.
Yes, and our go-to-market strategy is we do it through system integrators. So we're expanding right now to Latin America. And the reason that we do it through system integrators is because they already have the relationships, they have already customer base. They have on average more than 1,500 units under service contracts, and they have a service portfolio which X Monitoring perfectly fits into that portfolio. So it's we've seen that it's a faster way to expand and to add value.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, super. It's worth to note, Ronnie, that before X Monitoring, if you wanted to monitor all your solutions, you actually had a group all these different providers, and what you did is you enable yourself to be connected to any device, and that's a interesting edge for now. Okay, so now I want to give the word to Carlos Audelo from Wawa.
Hi, Jack. Thank you for the time today. I'm the CEO and founder of Wawa. Here with me also Luciano, our CTO at Wawa. We are building for e-commerce businesses that actually want to increase the payment success rate, the average billing, and especially reduce the fraud in Latin America. Wawa is essentially a no-code checkout experience that provides shopper ID, authentication, one-click checkout, and payment orchestration with traditional and alternative payment methods in one single integration. Essentially, that's what we do.
Cool. And so that's a product that gets built into other people's e-commerce sites.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
That's
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. And last but not least, Herman Lopez from Publifier.
Hi, yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Herman Lopez. I'm right now in Guayaquil, and I'm the CEO from Publifier. Publifier is a platform that helps agencies and brands manage their influencer campaigns using a pay-per-click and a pay-per-impression model, similar business model as Google AdSense with websites. Right now, we are already operating in Ecuador, our test market, and we are already working with 80 brands. We have already 15,000 registered influencers, and we are growing month to month 25%. And we are facing a lot of growth challenge. So I'm going to have a lot of questions during the conversation. Our early adopters are like mass consumption brands like Pepsi, Corona, Pringles on the brand side, and on the influencer side are more micro and nano influencers.
Okay, so just so I know, you make a way for influencers to get paid more or get paid, period, based on the volume of clicks from people clicking because of that, right? Like it changes it to more of a make more money with more traction because of more data type play.
Exactly, like I'm paying the influencer based on their performance and not on their like post, like how.
Right.
I'm paying
You're
on
not
their
paying them because they're
results.
famous. You're paying them because people are clicking.
Exactly. I'm paying them because of the reach that the reel has or the post has, or the number of clicks that this post had on their feed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry that took a little bit.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I knew who was on here. So
Yeah, so again, that's a brief view. I think it's going to be enriching for conversations. You can stop whatever you find useful. Now, Jack, I would like you to first of all introduce yourself. I mean, how do you get to be where you are? And then we can start flowing the conversation forwards. Again, this type of session is open questions, so please, everyone, don't leave anything hanging. Whenever I will be asking questions that I find relevant for all of you guys.
cool. Well, how I got where I was is this is where my mother decided to have her first baby. I didn't get to pick that. But how I got to where I am in life. Look, I mean, so two things. One, I don't know if in Fernando, I didn't ask, are these fund 2 or fund 1 companies for you guys?
Fund 2 companies, the first batch.
Okay, well, you're also talking to an investor in all you guys then, because I'm happy to be an LP in the fund. So don't screw this up. No, I'm joking. I think it's important to realize I'm an operator. My father was an entrepreneur. Him and my mom split when I was young. So a lot of the time I spent with him, he kind of like always worked and had fun at the same time. So, I mean, I started working on a delivery truck when I was 9 or 10. So it happened early, you know, and so I'm going to be 40 this year. So I've probably been working for about the last 30 years in some type of operational role. So I'm not a typical investor in the sense of like a VC. A lot of angels are either born into money or they somehow went out and taken risks and found it on its own. I'm definitely the latter. Grew up in a family that went through bankruptcy, you know, dealt with all the crap that you could possibly deal with. Outside of sickness and death, thank God. Those are two things that I didn't really have to deal with as a child. But I failed at a lot of stuff. You know, in my 20s, I worked in venture and tried to help. I basically was a consultant on behalf of a venture fund, but I got more of my money from the companies than I did the fund itself. So I was very, very much like an independent operator. I kind of function as like a CFO, CXO for a lot of very deep tech businesses. Commercial applications of military defense, people, physicists and chemists and clinicians that left their individual practice to start companies, really deep tech stuff. So a lot of biotech and material science. And I just realized I was having fun, but I wasn't making any money at it. As those are very difficult things. I mean, these are people trying to cure cancer, right? I mean, they're complete crapshoots. And it wasn't actually until I decided to like start a family of my own in Buffalo that I kind of narrowed down and went back to what I knew best. My father, in and of itself, was a marketplace himself. He was a middleman, right? He's an antique dealer, and then he had a furniture business too. They did a lot of wholesaling. So when I sat back and thought about it, I'm like, what is my life experience? At the time I started my company, I was 30. So I basically just had fun and failed a ton in my 20s, tens of times, right? Like a lot. Never put money into a company or spent time with the company. The equity was worth anything. So you really got to be resilient. But you know, you learn a lot along the way. So when I became 30, I said, why don't I do something that I know? So me and a couple guys started a marketplace. It was a B2B marketplace for cars. They got bought and sold between dealers. And we got lucky. I mean, luck is a huge part of this. It's like hard work and luck. And grew that from 2024. We launched the company. 2025, we sold our first car. Excuse me, 2014, 2015. We sold our first car. And now, you know, that first month we had a great first month. We sold like 50 cars across the system, you know, at a couple $100 a piece. You know, that was $10,000 in our first month, which we thought was a ton. You know, those 50 cars a month have now grown to about 75,000 cars a month. So, you know, that's what's happened over the last 8 years. And so a lot of it's, you know, simple business model, right? Like I always tell people, I actually fight with my founders on this a lot, or excuse me, my partners on this a lot, is that I don't need like a revolutionary product. I don't need like generation defining tech, if that's what you're aiming for, right? To be a decacorn, you know, 3 commas in your sale, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most amazing thing in the whole world, right? I mean, eBay started out selling basically Pez dispensers. It's like a novelty that has to do with a candy brand up here. You know, Uber started out as like black car limo service. You know, so you start to see this stuff and you just think, you know, Amazon started with selling books. Like I don't even know the last time I bought a book. And it's like the most powerful e-commerce brand in the world. At least I believe that. So, you know, a lot of this comes from just doing what you're good at. And like, I think for a long time I fought against that. You know, I said, oh, I'm smart. I should do smart things. I'm really quick, right? Like I like to learn all this stuff. And then what I realized when I ended up really being successful was one, when I focused on one thing, which you guys are all doing now, which is great. And two, doing something that just came really easy and naturally to me. And you know, for us, like a marketplace, especially a B2B one, is about relationships. You know, it's basically a business built on relationships and how you manage and make money off those. And so when you boil things down to like its core, its sense, right? So like Bucks app, right? Like you help clean bank data. But what you're really doing is like getting rid of the bullshit work that nobody wants to do. I don't think anybody loves going through and like combing and connecting things. And it also creates, you know, higher value work for the people that are involved because you're actually creating, instead of carrying the water every time, you're creating piping, right? You're the first plumbers in you know, in the banking industry down in Latam. Now I'm completely guessing this is what it is, but you get what I'm saying, right? So like I always tell people like try and rationalize things. I'm Italian and I got family that's from Italy. And in addition to us not speaking the same language, we come from very different cultures. We come from very different places, even though the culture is the same. And I always tell something. Imagine you're explaining this to your old uncle that's from another country, right? Like he's smart, he's been around the world, a smart guy, but like you got to break it down to its basic things. And if it doesn't make sense, the story you tell to like an, that or my son's 7. If I can't explain to my 7-year-old son, I won't invest in the company. He's like, oh, daddy, this is how rocket ships go faster. And I go, yeah, okay, good. I can explain it. Like it makes a rocket ship go faster. So, I'm happy to talk about whatever. I can tell you, I have experiences as an investor. I've cut probably close to 300 checks. A lot of those were over 130 angel bets, and a good number. I'm also an LP in about 60 funds, like I am with Point Trip too. A lot of first and second time funds, a lot of pre-seed and seed investments, right, where you guys all are. So, happy to talk through whatever aspects of this you guys want to talk about. I probably have been part of, I don't even know, hundreds of financing rounds. Right now, I'm to the point where like it doesn't matter. Like founders will send other founders to me. I'll talk to them twice. I'll never talk to them before, and my advice will be what they take. I'm trying to figure out what to do for a financing round because I don't charge for what I do, and I only take intros through like vetted sources. So happy to talk about whatever you guys want. And I'll tell you, I don't know a lot more than I know, but whatever experience I have, I'm happy to share.
Amazing. So I have a question from Ronnie, but before that, Ronnie, there's something I would like to double down, Jack. So you've written a lot of checks as an angel. You've written directly and indirectly through the funds. What in this first couple of calls, what makes you tick? I mean, what is it that you're looking for? What really gets into your gut? What makes you feel like, all right, this is something I would like to know more about? When does that happen?
So I am pretty much industry agnostic. Okay. So there are some industries I don't love. Like I'm not big into marketing tech. I don't know it. I don't get it. Me personally, I hardly buy anything online. I'm actually really a Luddite, like, somebody that doesn't use technology that much, which aligns with my core values because a lot of what I do is I invest in bringing offline things online, right? Or digitizing them, right? Or just creating a more efficient system around it. So for me, I think I'm different than a lot of VCs. A lot of VCs have thesis that they work on. Like a good friend of mine, Caitlin Donnelly, that runs a group called Avalanche. She talks about future of learning, future of earning, future of something else. I forget what the third thing is, and like you got to fall into one of those categories. So she's thinking categorically like, all right, how does this change the way people make money or the way people work? Or how does this change the way people, learn? For me, it's different than that. I mean, I'm a gut guy, right? Like most angels, I got to like you. There's got to be something in you that I like. I need to know that as like, I care a lot about founders that can sell, but I hate when people are salesy. Now, you're like, what does that mean, right? And you just kind of know, right? It's the feel of it. Confidence goes a long way with me. The average amount of time that a founder has lived in the industry or of the platform time they're working in that I've gone into personally is 10 years. So that could be growing up in an industry and going into it. The last bet we did through Far Out was 3 guys whose families were all in the pest extermination space. Now, I've never even called an exterminator before, but I could buy into it. And I believe that they understand and felt the problem enough that I had the confidence that now it's just about, does the platform work? Right? I'm a platform guy. It's a marketplace. Let's talk. It's vertical SaaS. Let's talk. It's e-commerce. Maybe let's talk, right? I've had some experience there. It's AI or chat GPT or blockchain. I don't know how in the hell any of that stuff works. I'll have you talk to John or Ian if I think you're interesting, right? My 2 partners, they're much smarter than me. So for me personally, that's the way I do it. I mean, I cut 130 checks. I went into 130 companies, cutting about 200 checks in like a 30-month period. Okay, so I was cutting about 8 checks a month. With a third of those being like doubling down on companies and and the other 2/3 being original bets. So I was vetting like 5 companies, like I was betting on 5 companies a month, something like that. And yeah, the way you do that is for me, it's all gut, So I can tell you, I say yes when a lot of people say no. Of those checks, 46 of them, I was the very first commit that they had ever had as an investor. So, I'm not some savant that just knows everything about everything. I mean, for me, it's more about the original feel. My difficulty and this is one of the reasons I love to be in funds in like Latin America, is I have to be able to get into the mind of the founder and understand it. I've never been south of Mexico. And because of that, like at Far Out, we've done 19 deals. I think 6 of them have been in Latin America. I have led 0 of them. So I personally have a philosophy of like, put money into funds that can make some money and that you can learn from. So I told myself over the next like 2-3 years, I really wanted to learn about Latin America more. And I'm happy to share with you guys at the end the other funds I'm in. A couple of them are a little bit later stage than where Brain Trip is, and they potentially could be opportunities to go into. Like BucksApp, I'm in a company called or a fund called Perserio, where they only are doing fintech down there, right? But it's not a huge fund. It's a guy that moved down from the U.S. and his partner is actually his wife, who's Brazilian. So, but like happy to open up that up to you guys too. But it truly comes down to the personality, the character, the conviction, the confidence. Can I buy the story? Because so early on, before you ever really have a business, if you're doing $500,000 in net revenue, your company's not worth 10 million bucks. Your story's worth 10 million bucks. Your company's probably worth less than $500,000. So until you get to the point of the company being worth more, it's all about the story.
That's amazing. What gives you trust? Because I believe trust is an important concept when you're actually going back to your gut.
So a lot of it's natural. I have done some work. Funny enough, it was a Latin American monk. I think he was Peruvian. They came up with this process that was called the Enneagram, which sounds like hokey and like, something the hippies do, but it's a pretty quick understanding of, it's almost like a really quick personality assessment, bucketing people into one of 9 different categories. It's basically their personalities. And the theory behind it is our personalities are armor of our fears. So this sounds sick, but within the first 10 minutes of talking to somebody, I try and figure out what terrifies them, how they've grown to protect themselves from that. And then you think I'm talking to you about your business, but I'm really talking to you about the way you think and operate. And it allows me to I give people a lot of additional credit because I don't think that I'm great at this. So you might run through this mental gymnastics project that I do, and my output might be, you're okay, but I'll give you a second chance. Those are not the people I invest in. The ones I invest in is I go, holy cow, this person's got it. They're an animal, right? I invest in like animals. Like, I'm doing a deal right now with a woman in New York City. Now, I'm not saying that anybody should do this, but I said to her, I go, do you have it? Are you going to win at any cost? And she said, I froze my embryos when I started this company, and I'm not having a kid till we sell it. And I'm almost 40 years old. So what do you think? And I was like, okay. I was like, you don't have to do that for me to invest, but like, you're a little nuts. And I did it. I mean, everybody, I put her in front of 20 people. They all passed. 20. These are 20 legit VCs. Like, and she's got a good company. And I committed, and we'll be closing a $2 million round with like 3 other VCs participating in the next week or so, in terms of first commit. So I will tell you this, a good VC, a good investor, if it's a VC, once they like you, they love you. You can't be in anything you like. You have to love it. Like I've told myself, I am not willing to invest in a company that I am not going to leave Far Out to go run if somebody asks if the opportunity was there. And so you got to see a lot of companies, and honestly, it's a dating game. I tell people like, you got to kiss a lot of frogs, to find a prince. You got to be resilient. And honestly, like it's a game of time. It really is. And this is for companies. I mean, Ann's company I just told you about, it's doing 3.5 million GMV a year. It's a marketplace. The equivalent for a SaaS business is it's about a $600,000 a year SaaS business. I was able to get in a really good price. I got in at 6 million pre. It was 10 times, her revenue. Tremendous growth. She had 50% month over month growth. Like the numbers were wild. She just was missing a couple components, and I said I can live with those, and I'm helping her fill those out now. So you really need a teammate.
Amazing. That's super insightful, Jack. Ronnie, you had a question.
Yeah, you sort of already touched upon what I was going to ask, which was how does your personal culture mix or converge with the company's culture? But I also would like to know how involved are you with the different companies and the different founders that you invest in?
Sure. So when I was an angel from 19 through really the middle of 22, really 19 through 21, 3 years, my whole life was I'd make an investment decision in 15 minutes. What I was doing when I made an investment decision, I was decide, do I want to work with you? That's all I had to decide. If it was like a 10 to 25K check. Then once I started working with you, the ones that were really good, I would cut 100K to a 250K check in personally. And I would help work and aggregate. And the dropout rate was probably, I mean, I didn't have enough money to put that kind of check into everybody I wanted to. I probably cut a dozen checks of 250 or more. I took, after tax, I probably took 16 million out of ACV. And all of it was deployed into venture, 100% of it before the end of 2021. And almost all of it in pre-seed and seed. So I just needed to know, I don't know. I mean, like the question is, how long do you really know before you want to hire somebody? Do you need to put them through 20 interviews? No. I mean, the truth is, if you like them or not pretty quick. How long does it take you to honestly close, not like a B2B sale, but like a B2C sale? How long does it take you to really be able to understand somebody? I think it takes 10 to 15 minutes. So for me, I was like, I'm making the commitment in 10 or 15 minutes if I kind of want to work with you a little. And then after I work with you for a while, I think, do I want to work with you more? So I was pretty involved. I ended up holding advisor. I think in addition to being an investor, I held a small nominal amount of like advisor shares. I had to get at least one share if somebody wanted to consider me an advisor and put them on the deck and stuff. And it was never a lot, but it was enough for them to consider it. And those companies I was working with there were months I might help them 2 days, like 2 full days. There were some months I didn't do anything. I was planning on about a half day a month per company, like an actual 4-hour block of supporting the company, whether it was direct conversation or working on behalf of them. And I really enjoyed that. Through the fund, it depends, right? Like a third of the companies that I go in, I'm a value-based investor. I do seed. My partners do pre-seed. So at the seed state, I don't expect to lose more than a third of the companies I'm going into. And when I say lose them, I mean like them just go kaput, right? I think a third of them are going to do great. A third of them are going to do okay. A third of them are going to suck. So the ones that are doing great, I'm like, hey, I'm here. I'm not here to slow you down. I'm typically either a board member or a board observer. So I have to be involved on a somewhat regular basis, maybe a monthly or quarterly basis at minimum. The ones that are in the middle that I don't know if they're going to die or they're great is really where I spend most of my time. And I dedicate about half the time I work, which I'm probably putting in 50-hour weeks right now, let's say, with Far Out. I do some other stuff on the side for fun. But so, 20 to 25 hours a week I'm putting towards the porcos. That maybe it's a little less than that. Maybe it's like 15 to 20 hours a week. And I have 5 of them that I manage. So, I'm probably spending 3 or 4 hours, but that's abnormal. I don't normally spend that kind of time with them right now. Because basically when they're fundraising, like I'll give you an idea. InSeam, this company we're doing now, I've been spending 3 hours a day, like calling VCs, calling, like just trying to generate business. So I almost like jump in as like a special forces guy for a while and get very involved in the business. And then I'll extract myself. I'm going to be a board member there, either member or observer. But then I know the business. So it's really like intense periods and then I'm around, and then intense periods I'm around. And I think it goes back to the days I was kind of like a consultant, you know? So I do get pretty involved.
This is very interesting, what you say. Again, that the fact that there's a value behind the check, because I know we know about it, but many founders don't value that aspect about it. So you said right now you invested even smaller checks, which it's not a small check, 25K, but what is your say on check sizes? What should founders be worried about?
Yeah. So
Holding small
yeah.
checks, big checks?
No, so look, I mean, people try, I laugh when people go, I'm not expecting small checks. I like to say this proverb. So before I had an exit from ACV, you know, I was doing angel investing's stupid unless you do it at high value. So I was doing stupid things with my money since a very young age, right? And it was not that much money, but it was a lot to me at the time. $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, still a lot of money. Don't ever think of that. Like there was a company and they said, well, our minimum's 25 grand. I go, I don't got it. I said, I can do 10,000. They go, the guy's like, I like you. I'll let you in. They were doing a seed round at a 12 million post. I gave him 10 grand. I introed him to Bessemer. Bessemer has backed him to the point of being a unicorn, and he never would have got into him if it wasn't for me. So because he tried, and he wasn't able to. So from a founder's point of view, take whatever check somebody wants to give you. If as long as they pass whatever sniff test they legally have to pass, and you know you're not taking their whole life savings, take it, because you never know who's going to be. They're all people rooting for you. Why would I not want more people in the stands? Why would I not want more people, you know, being like, let me help you, right? From an investor point of view, as an angel, I did a stupid job. I was cutting checks between 10 grand. I cut one check at $1 million. That's way too big of a width. Because the thing is, if I'm using the same theory to like filter things, why am I putting different bets on each one? I was listening too much to the founder on how much they were raising and what they needed. And I was just filling the gap, which was stupid. Now, did it work out? A $1 million check came back at a 3.5x 2 years later. I mean, that it was a nice one to, you know, hit blackjack on. But you know, my second biggest check at 750, I think I got 50 or 55% of my money back. And I had a check at 500 that went to zero. And the truth is, I looked at my own portfolio, if I had just gone to every company the exact same number, when I went in, I made the decision to invest or not to invest. But if it was the same size check, I would have almost had like a 40% better return overall. So what does that tell me? I'm using the same filter to let everything through. And I shouldn't let my excitement, like maybe I was having a good day, so I cut a bigger check. And maybe I looked at my bank account, there's no money in there, so I cut a smaller check, right? Like I can tell you most angels act the way I do now, which is they standardize their check size, and they should. You know, a good angel should have a portfolio of 15 to 20 companies at minimum, all at the same check size, and be very careful about follow-on investing. So from a fund point of view, I try and standardize it pre-seed, which to me is you don't have a product till you have a product to have a little bit of revenue. So you got some revenue, but you're not really ready for seed. Those checks for us are between, you know, there's still a little range, but they're between 200,000 and 300,000 for the fund. And seed checks, you've got growth. It's meaningful. I can actually understand why you're growing. You know, those companies are usually a $500,000 ARR or more. Those checks are like 400,000 to 500,000, and there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. More likely, I want to cut a $500,000 check, but I don't want to be, you know, 7 or 8% of the round because of the round dynamic, so I get artificially squeezed down because of it. that's a byproduct of being good at getting people to want to come in on the deals I do. There's just more people at the party, and you do get to a point where like you can't take, you don't want to take 35% dilution in a single round. So everybody's gonna kind of squeeze down. But that's the way I think of check sizes. And as a founder, you really got to think every time you go and raise a round, you're gonna take dilution between 15 and 30%. It's probably more likely gonna be 20 to 25%. But like, so the question is like, and what are the meaningful steps? Like Series A is the real point where I think these days, unless you have like a killer tech that's red hot, everybody wants it. The old proverb was $1 million in ARR is when you go do your Series A. That's net ARR if you're a marketplace. I actually think it's about the growth into that point. $1 million in ARR works if you 3 or 4x going into it. If you're more like a 2 to 3x, I think you actually got to be at like $1.5 million or 2 million in ARR. And if you're below 2x, you're not a venture company. When you get to the point of being in those numbers, like you really got to be able to, excuse me, show that those are very much rules of thumb. And I like to see that all from the same product. So like, yes, like if you figure out a way to sell your customers a second product, your business could potentially double. But like, I care more about the acquisition rate of customers than I do I care more about growth rate of customer than I care about growth rate of revenue. I think I'm a little bit different in a VC in that method. Like, just give me an idea. ACV, we signed up a dealer, and then that dealer gave us cars. I care more about the number of dealers that gave us cars than the number they gave us. Because if their business was down that month, but they still gave us every single car they had, their business will return. Okay, their revenue went down, but they loved me. And I cared about the number of people that loved me, right? So for me, I want to reach through your business and say, if your business is and this is way more for anything that's got a variable revenue component to it than like, let's say enterprise, where it's like a flat rate per month. Flat rate per month, it's a direct correlation between customers and revenue. Growth means more customers. But when it comes to like a transaction type event, I want to know how many customers you got. And later on, we can juice up the revenue. I want to see the customer grow.
That's amazing. Sebastian, you have a question?
Hi, Jack. Yeah, thank you. I actually have two questions. The first one is, are you seeing, in terms of the founders that get a check basically from VCs and angels, are you seeing a trend or pattern from that first check that you had to the most recent check that you had? That's my first question.
Yep.
And my second one is, you talked about 10-15 minutes to basically get to know a founder, which I think I completely agree with. What are some of the you talk about the green flags, let's say. What are some of the red flags that you see and you're like, okay, this is a big no-no in the first 10-15 minutes?
Okay, so the difference in what I've seen investing, I'll tell you, when I first started being in venture in 2008, you had to be in a huge city, right? Like I was doing it in Rochester, New York, which a city of about 1 million people had at the time 3 or 4 Fortune 500 companies. Although those are not the same big companies they have there now. They've kind of turned over a little. And the change from then till now is, from then until like I started investing in, let's say really like 15, 16, I started investing almost right after I started ACVD, small amounts. Was people would actually start looking not in the main city. But I would say, especially now, it's all about, especially since COVID, location doesn't matter as much. Network matters more. So the people that are getting backed are the people that have the right network. Narrow, tight companies not trying to do everything do better than broad-based ones. I don't want to hear that, so with Comey, that's the reason I was pushing on this. Like, how narrow do you get with what you do? Are you doing this just for the cannabis industry? Are you doing this just for the scientific community around research pharmaceuticals? Are you doing this just for, consumer healthcare products, right? Like, I want to see something really narrow, really tight. And I think a lot of investors do. because they realize once you go deep, you can always go wider, right? This goes back to the statement I made about revenue expansion. So that's kind of the way I've seen the world change a little bit. I think originally it was you wanted to back founders that had been in the industry, a lot of experience. Then you went through this period where it was like, give me the kid that dropped out of Stanford, give me the genius, right? And now it's more back to kind of an almost in between or back to where it was, where like I see experience really matters. Second time founders are able to raise money, even if you failed in your first company, like 5 times easier than first time founders. So there's more of an emphasis on experience. So if you don't have it, you got to figure out a way to curb it. Okay. For the green flag, red flag question, red flags for me, if you're not confident but arrogant, if you don't tell a very just like what I did with you guys, like give this to me and like pretend I'm going into a test and I need to write on my hand because I'm going to cheat. I need to be able to write on my hand exactly what your company does. And I don't have the biggest mitts in the world, right? I need to be able to write it down and be like, I know it. Okay. Because I want to spend my time not trying to understand your business, but trying to understand you. So if I can't understand your business quick, we're out. And trust me, look, I've worked in some pretty deep tech spaces, and it all boils to simple things, I would also say companies that I like North Star metrics that are building solvent businesses. I don't need to know that you're driving towards profitability, but I need to know that you're fundamentally building a business that's not requiring capital in order to stay alive, right? Like I'm building a business that's doing X. I'm taking pre-seed and seed money. Anything prior to Series A is venture funding, but like you don't have to be a massive business. So like a green flag is a founder that understands the way venture works. A red flag is people who go, I know venture works this way, and so I'm going to play the game, because I don't like people to play games. I've never dated a woman that liked to play games. I don't like founders that like to play games. I don't like them at all, right? So like that just gives you a sense of some of the things that I care about that matter to me. I will also say, like, when it comes to red flags, what a lot of founders think of as a red flag is they'll be like, who else is in it? Who else is interested in it? Which is really tough. That doesn't bother me at all. I have zero interest who likes you and who does not like you. But I would say when you're talking to most VCs, you got to figure out the path, right? So like, the team at Blaine Trip, Fernando and team, like the best we can do as, like I'll say as like an LP in it, is connect Fernando to other people so that he can become a trusted representative, that when he shows a deal to somebody, you want somebody to show you to your next person. That it does not happen very much, right? And nobody's guaranteeing that they're capable of doing that. But like green flags are like, I get reference from an adjacent connection. A red flag is that the founder doesn't know anybody, right? Like, because as an early stage investor where you guys are, and this is less important as you get bigger, until you get a Series A bet, you really aren't working with somebody that's a true player in venture that has a name brand behind them, right? Like once Bessemer bet on us, it was easy to raise money. Prior to Bessemer betting on us, to get to Bessemer was nearly impossible, right? And some ways to get around that are, again, talking to people that have done it before. A founder that's not talking to peers, like I ask founders, tell me a couple people that I could call right now that are a step ahead of you, that you have a relationship with, a peer you have a relationship with, and somebody below you that you're helping. And if you don't have one of every one of those, I'm out, because it does not mean that you're getting enough. You don't have that like peer reflective state. You talk to people under you to stay humble and also understand what's coming, avant-garde. You talk to your peers to be able to understand what are the problems of today. And you talk to the people a step later because they have a network that you don't. So it's really important. I mean, you guys are technically part of an alumni, or, they're alumni from the program. And I hope there's a lot of interconnection there. But it doesn't need to be somebody else from Ecuador. If each one of you said, and be specific, hey, I'd love to meet somebody, it's an enterprise software in a traditional business model that is trying to do XYZ, just ask the question really specific, because that's what gets my brain. I run through the CRM in my brain and I try and figure out who I know, and I'll make a connection. So, but it means that you have to focus. Those connections don't typically happen accidentally. So I know it was a long-winded answer, but it was a pretty big nut.
Talking about flags, and before I give the question to Herman, you just told us that you rather hear someone is very narrowly focused on something rather than wide. Would that be a red flag for you, and why?
No, it's a green flag. Like, so let me give you an example. This deal we did in Boise, Idaho. Okay, I don't know how many of you guys rent a house, but in the US, if you rent a house, not in an apartment building, but a single house, which obviously happens more outside of dense metro areas. If you rent a house in the US and you have a pest problem, it's on the back of the renter. Okay, so these guys built a platform where it allows property managers to take pest control and make money off it. Basically, go to the renter and say, you're going to pay $20 a month, and us, the landlord, are going to take the responsibility for pest control off your shoulders. Just call this number and everything is taken care of. The company's had great growth. $1.5 million ARR, build about 4 million booked, really strong 4x year-over-year growth. They come to me and they go, we think we want to do this in apartment buildings too. And I said, if you do it in apartment buildings, I'm out. And they said, why? I said, well, one, you're talking about bugs. As a dumb investor, if I have a cockroach in my house and I live out in a cornfield, I got a cockroach in my house. If I got a cockroach in my house and I live in an apartment building, the whole apartment building's got cockroaches, right? And I thought their inherent business model could potentially get destroyed on that, which made sense that these apartment building owners wanted it so badly because there's systemic problems. But I said, look, you can always expand to that later, get into as many property managers as possible. Then let's later on figure out if we can do it in vacation rentals. Let's figure out if we could do it in apartment buildings. Let's figure out if we could do it in row housing. Let's figure out if we could do it blah, 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 commercial applications. But like, so for me, I wanted that because the name of the game is not revenue. The name of the game is the relationship with the property manager. So that's what I care about a lot. I need to understand your business. What are the relationships that allow you to grow a good business? And later on, we'll figure out how to sell them 10 other things. Okay. But that happens in a mature company, not in a growing company.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jack. Herman?
Yes, Leo, I actually wanted to ask the same question before, because my question was when you want to go narrow, when is the time to go wide? But you already answered my question.
So like, you know, with what you do with managing influencer campaigns, I'm pretty quick. I invested in a company that failed called PowerSpike, and PowerSpike it was out of Albany, New York. I put way too much money in it. I kind of got screwed up. I got hosed a little bit. They were supposed to sell, and I let them borrow some money to do the acquisition and never went through. So investors are dumb too, right? Like, please don't ever abuse our trust because it makes it hard to do angel bets after that. But, you know, with them, they started, so I don't know, do you guys have like Twitch or Steam down there? Like you guys use that like as a media platform? I don't know if anybody's
No, we use we don't use Twitch. We use more TikTok and Instagram, like. Okay. But we're connected to those, and we have our own platform to track the impressions and the.
Well, but just hear this story real quick, right? So like in the US, it's really popular to watch other people play video games. Okay. Yeah. On whatever platform they do that in Latin America, I'm sure people do it there too. Yeah. This company realized they have a very unique niche of people watching those channels. In the US, it's Twitch and Steam. So they built a platform that had major brands, Coca-Cola, they had Coinbase, they had like these major brands advertise amongst those influencers. Okay. The reason why I did it was because they only did it on those platforms, which made, like in the US, it's like a 14 to 35-year-old male demographics, like 90% of what's on there. And I loved that because I understood marketing and brand agencies that help allocate where dollars go are looking for things that are very pure. They talked about moving into YouTube and TikTok and other places. I was like, no, other people are going to do it. They're no. And they did get distracted and they started developing it for other platforms. And they had a huge tech spend. And it turned out that they took their eye off the ball and the thing ended up dying. It just died. Now, the risk in that is if they were just on Twitch and Steam, and for some reason the video game industry lost, video game viewership fell out of trend, they would die. But it's okay. Like, the thing is, you need to build this on the back of an industry, not on a trend, right? And I think if you get distracted, it costs so much money to do technical work. And like your market, the dollars you spend, let's say on digital marketing, get washed out so quick. I need to know, until you get to Series A, these are all experiments. Do not run 5 experiments at once, because you will not get the data you need, and you will not get the cycles through the experiments enough to optimize what you're doing. That's the way I think of it. That's just me, right?
Thanks for the advice. So I should focus on one platform, but because it's true what you are saying, because every time I want to open a new platform, it costs me a technical work, and it's always a new challenge. I maybe should, especially in one platform.
Yeah, like I think this just gives you an analogy of the way I think. I live in a very modest house. It's a 3-bedroom house. It's the same house I bought when I first moved to Buffalo. It's nice. It's brick on the bottom. It's got a 2-car garage. And people go, why didn't you want a bigger house? Why don't you want to buy more houses? Why didn't you do that when you sold ACV? And I said, I didn't want that. Everything in my house is the best, right? Like it's right. Like I got a sink. I got the best fucking sink in the world, right? So some people really care about like what you are building. And I like to keep things tight and neat. Because guess what? If I have 4 houses, I can't just pick up and go to Ecuador for a week if I want to. Because I want to go spend time in my other house. Like you don't think through the opportunity costs that you lose when you start making these bets, and you don't know. The truth is, if you're like, I could go into these 3 markets, in a year, you're like, I could go into these 9 markets. And in another year, you're like, I could go into these 25 markets. But like, the force of the business gets too diluted when you start spreading wide. That's not the business you should be in. When you get to Series B and C, then you can talk about that. But the best companies I see just do one thing amazingly well.
And when you say go wide, it's also not only, it's also mean in terms of markets, like not only on product, also on market level, or you mean that?
Yeah, I mean, for like, again, like ACV is worth like $3 billion. We do one thing. For new car dealers, they take the cars they don't want to retail and put them on the platform, and used car dealers buy them. That's it. We don't do boats. We don't do RVs. We don't do power sport. We don't do bicycles. We don't let independent people sell to independent people. We don't have dealers sell to customers. We don't it is now they've expanded a little bit since I've left because now they do some financing and stuff. It's one thing if you go, I have enough customers to hear what they want, and they want me to help facilitate transportation. Now I'm being pulled into that, but you should not be pushing into any avenues. Okay. I mean, we had raised $450 million, not doing our auctions were all 20 minutes. We never even changed the length of an auction, and we had raised close to $500 million. So just get really good at your one thing. When I eat ketchup, I buy Heinz ketchup because it's the best fucking ketchup, right? Like, that's what I want. I want the best. And you want to be the best at something. I look at professional sports athletes and I'm like, they can be great at any sport, but they can't be great at every sport. So I want a killer, and I want them focused, and I want the best. It's the only way to create true enterprise value, I think, from the startup stage.
Super. Fernando?
Thanks, Jack. That's the same advice we always give our founders in our portfolio. The tension in Latin America rises because, especially when you're building non-traditional, not one of the top tier markets like Mexico or Brazil. In smaller markets, there's the feeling, the need that you need to go broad and capture as, because each market segment that you go after is so small. So, for example, in our case, as a firm, we've decided to go narrow on the business model, but we're still broad geographically, relatively broad geographically, and broad in the industry. Or some of our companies are building sort of like e-commerce infrastructure. And so they need to be able to connect to multiple providers.
Sure.
Like logistics, payments, stuff like that. But then they try to narrow geographically. They'll do it just in Mexico. So there's always a play of where you can specialize. Doesn't always have to be by type of solution. It can be by market, or I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. So let me ask you a question. How many people live in Ecuador?
18 million.
18
and then we
million.
have people here from Paraguay and Bolivia, which are even smaller.
Okay. And how many of them live in Quito?
3 to 4.
3 to 4 million. Okay. So now look, obviously you have to have all the pieces of your business, right? You can't be a plumber and not know where to go buy pipe. Okay. You have to be able to have the core competency of a criticality of the business. If the way you acquire customers, okay, I'll give you an example, like the banking company, WhatsApp, right? If you work with banks and there is no network effect, aka like if working with a bank across the street does not help you close the bank on the other side of the street, then geographically, do you have to be that narrow? No, but I'll tell you what, in the beginning for your first bunch of customers, I personally still think you got to be there. If you could be there virtually and it doesn't matter, that's fine. I'm an in the flesh kind of person. So why am I investing in 2 companies or 2 banks? If my 2 customers are 6 hours apart, I just turned into a professional driver because I'm driving between the 2 of them all the time, right? That ends up being a pain in the butt. So geo does matter to some degree. What I don't get is everybody in a Spanish-speaking country that's not Mexico is in a rush to get to Mexico. Who in the hell is covering everything else, right? Like, why in the hell are you going? I'll tell you what, if I was a bird hunter, I would go where all the fucking birds were. So, so the birds that don't go where all the rest of them do, they don't go to the same spot, don't get shot. Like, I don't get why everybody's trying to go to Mexico City. Like, if I look at the population of Mexico, and let's say, for your business, it's got to be a population that can actually afford to buy whatever it is. And I look at the population of the rest of Latin America. Let's take Brazil out of it. They speak Portuguese. For some reason, it might as well be Mars. It seems like there's like 2 different places. And I'm dumb. But like, if you take the population of everything else, is it that much smaller? Like if I'm adding together Chile and Argentina and Ecuador and Colombia and every other damn place down there, like I actually make the argument people might be too worried about geographic concentration with that stuff. Like the densest populated city in the United States is New York City. My business, ACV, does 0 business in New York City. 0. None. Because it does not align with where we are in business. Our number 1 market in the United States is Buffalo, New York. Buffalo's got 1 million people in it. We have 380 million people in the United States. You can do a lot of business where you are if your business is compliant to it. So I don't understand. I mean, it's what, a 2.5 hour flight from Mexico City to Quito? How long does it take to get from one to the other? 5?
It's closer to go to Miami than it is to Mexico City.
Right. So I'm sitting here being like, why is your next market 5 hours away? What the hell is going on there that's so important? And I'm like, you guys are like the US in like the early 2000s. Mexico City and like Sao Paulo are like New York and San Francisco. And guess what? Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense, because why are you going where all the rest of the competition is? like I get it if you have to like get talent from places. All right, fine. But I actually think if you got good people in Ecuador, the advantage is that people in Mexico City are not looking to Ecuador for talent. So outside of talent, like you do have to think through why am I doing this? Because if you just get in line with everybody else that's going in that direction, you're not doing a single thing unique. And guess what? The average company dies. And if you're doing what the average person does, you're going to die too. So I just don't get it, you know? And
Yeah,
again,
and
this
thanks
is
for
why I
bringing that
can't
up
invest
because
personally in
yeah,
Latin America because I'm like, because there must be something. I'm not that.
it
know.
I think it speaks to the issue that I'm seeing and that I'd like to point out, where founders forget that the purpose of a company is not to raise money. So people move to Mexico City because stupid American VCs are like, if you're not in Mexico, I'm not going to invest in you. So what do people do? They go to Mexico. Has nothing to do with the strategy of the company. It's like making the VC's life easier. Why? That's not your job. Your job is to find customers that are willing to pay for your solution. That's so. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and look, not that you want me to say this, American VCs are stupid too. Like, I was on a call yesterday with a large fund investor out of the Middle East. Okay, and they go, well, it doesn't seem like you have much of a presence in San Francisco and New York. And I asked him, I go, how many funds are you investor in? And these guys are cutting a minimum check into a fund of 15 million. He's like, about 30. I'm like, okay, so you got 450 million bucks in venture and now a smaller number of that was in the US. Let's say half of it touched the US, but 225 million bucks. How many of those funds aren't in New York or San Francisco? He goes, 0. I go, so what kind of coverage do you have in the other 48 of the 50 biggest cities in the United States? And he laughed. He goes, not much. I go, all right, well, here's where I go. Like, I'm covering 15 of the other 48 cities. So maybe you should think about us, right? And so you just realize we're dumb too. I'm not saying if you don't go to Mexico, you won't be able to raise your next round, but again, you better have a network there. You better, right? I still go to New York City once every 3 weeks, even though I don't really invest there, because that's where all the VCs are. And I show up and you would think it's like Christmas. They're like, what did Santa bring us? Oh boy, I got this company out of Kentucky. They're like, oh my God, Kentucky, that sounds so exotic, blah, 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 right? But that's what, I mean, look, that's the arbitrage we play it far out. That's why like when we invested in AltScore, right? It was like, hey, these guys are out of Ecuador, I mean, I wish we met them before they went into the Techstars program. We would have gotten in a hell of a lot better valuation. I think I joke with Andres all the time. We way overpaid to get into that, but that wasn't my deal. But you got to find the people, and there's not a lot of us that'll go places like that. You might have to go to Mexico to get some money, and that sucks. And maybe in 15 years, when my job's done, people won't be like that, but it's still kind of the way it is a little. So.
Super. Thank you very much, Jack. We have a couple of questions here. Ronnie?
Thank you. Jack, I want to circle back with a specific question on our case and get your thoughts on it. Right now, we have developed our product to be able to monitor specifically power equipment and HVAC cooling equipment.
Yep.
But we're getting a lot of demand from our current customers that they want us to develop, and we've been working on it, but they want us to develop a sensor for diesel generators. It's a hard ask. It's not simple, but it's something that's coming from current customers. What's your view on that?
It sounds like a completely different business. So would you give up your current business for that one?
No.
No. So, and look, if you do, side note, if you do work with HVAC equipment, I have a startup actually out of Buffalo that's backed by Munich Reinsurance that's in the HVAC space. It's more of an e-commerce play. I'm happy to introduce you to.
Thank you.
Look, you don't, you better make sure when somebody asks you to do something that they have a budget and a wallet to do it. Because I can't tell you how many times people want to do what we call in the States NRE, non-reoccurring engineering or basically one-time money to build something. And the guy doesn't even have a budget. I've experienced this way more when I was in the technical world. But look, you got to make the decision. Is that a key that opens a door for you to do more of the same thing you were doing before or not? Because it's going to be a distraction, right? It just is. But if you're like, God, I'm not getting any market traction, I got no other options, then maybe it's worth doing. But if that's the case and you got no other options, what you're saying is my current business model is not scalable and venture backable. And I'm going to use capital and time to potentially do something different, even though it's in a close proximity to what I'm doing now. I would think of that like a completely different endeavor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, no problem.
Super. Alberto?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jack. Thank you for your time. I really you got me thinking a lot about the founders, about the network that they should have, and also all the companies have. I was looking through your LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago and today again, and I see many companies that you are an advisor, angel investor, and my question would be, which investment do you think at the moment is been your most successful investment, and what has been the key on those investments to succeed?
Well, okay, the difference between the best company and the best investment, just to be clear, is this magic thing we call price, okay? If somebody sold me, I don't know, let's think of a failing company. I would say Silicon Valley Bank, but like they went under. But if somebody sold me Silicon Valley Bank and it's a stock at a penny and I sold it at $1, it'd be 100x, right? I only have one company that I'm nearing 100x return on. So as an investment, it would have done great, but it's a stupid business model. So like, look, I mean, I personally, I think of my companies a little bit like children. You know, give me a couple beers and close the doors and I'll tell you which one I love the most. But like openly, I really care about all of them. But you know, the companies that I have the most, like that'll ultimately end up being financially the biggest return are the companies I got in the earliest, bar none, right? Like the companies I've gone in as a first check and pre-seed, there are a handful of them that I think are really going to end up being great returns for me, but it might end up being a great return that sells for 60 or $70 million, right? I'm in a couple companies now that if depending on how you value them are probably unicorns, but they're of all but one of them, I got in at like Series A or later, so the multiple won't be that great. And guess what? The founder was really good at pricing it, and the valuation was high. So the difference between a good investment and a good business is there is some disassociation, and it really comes down to price. You know, there's one business where they were raising at a $5 million valuation. It was a pre-seed autonomous aircraft product out of Quebec, Canada. Fell in love with the founder. I said, I don't got a lot of money. I'll give you 10 grand. He goes, you're not going to have enough ownership to care. So instead of giving me 20 basis points in the business, which I would have gotten for 5 million, he gave me 100 basis points. He basically let me in for a fifth the price of everybody else. I've helped him. I've been supportive. That business is now profitable and producing dividends. And that might end up being like, you know, 100x return. And that's because he only raised one round of funding and he gave me a deal on it. Do I think it's a good business? Yeah, but it's, you know, if I got in that at a $20 million valuation, it would have been a 5-bagger for me. So price is really a huge indicator on what a good bet is versus not a good bet. And I'd say there's maybe only 70, 80% overlap between good bets and good companies.
Super.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So Jack, I want to go a little bit back to what makes you tick. And I'm interested in knowing what would be a phone call you would likely answer if someone tells you that they want to talk about their strengths and why they're best at something. Or would you rather have a talk of someone that says, you know, I want to tell you what I'm good at, what I'm regular at, what my challenge is at, because I want to know how you could actually help me on this thing.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you know, that's kind of a loaded question, right? I mean, I definitely would want the second. And depending on how you say it to me, you might lose my interest pretty quick though, if it doesn't perk it, right? It's easy for me to say, oh, I want people to be honest. But if honesty is boring, then it also, like, you just have to be aware of the way you tell your story. Like I said earlier, none of your companies are worth the valuation of what you're raising at on paper. Your story is what's worth the valuation. Same thing in every time you talk about your business. You know, like, it's about what the value of the story is. It's about what it can become. Your prospects. None of you are ready for the big leagues yet. None of you are going to compete and kill Amazon or destroy Uber. Like, that's not going to happen. But if I'm trying to figure out, do you have early indicators and signals of being something that can truly be a great company, and more so because now I run the fund, a great bet. So yeah, I want to hear the second, but I want to make sure I'm interested the whole time.
Yeah, it was a loaded question, because what I was trying to pick your brain out is how important honesty is when you're actually talking, because it can be a complete deal breaker. And many times founders don't want to be vulnerable because they think, you know, the only way I'm going to be interesting is because it's about telling them I'm the best of the best of the best, sir. But whereas if you're honest about it, I mean, I'm the best at this, but I have challenges. It actually tells you a little bit more about how this relationship is going to be between you both, right? I mean, you don't want someone that's, I'm gonna use the slang word, but always bullshitting you, because you really want to be helpful, and you cannot help unless you know what their challenges are.
Yep. Yeah. No, and look, at the pre-seed or seed level, when I invest, I'm saying, here's some money that mostly is not mine, but you're going to get my time, which I really value. Because if I'm a VC, I got here because I did something right. Okay. Maybe I was born in the right family. Maybe I just happened, but like, to raise money is tough. It is. So VCs, their time is the most valuable thing. Angels, it might not be that way. Some are like, shit, I'm never working again. I'll waste your time. Here's some money, and then they're gonna waste your time, right? So like, you just have to be smart about things. Nobody, rich or poor, is any smarter or any dumber than anybody on this call. And so do not feel like somebody is superior or inferior to you at any time. Because once you take the logic out of what you do, you're screwed.
Amazing. Thanks, Jack. Carlos, we have a question from you.
Thanks, Jack, for that much knowledge in this call. I wanted to just try to have your take on, you know, as in our case, for instance, we are super early in our journey and trying to like find the path to like to reach a good level of business. But talking this early to some investors, you know, it's like sometimes hard because you know it's about the story, and that's like the fun part, the fun part. But in some cases, what kind of metrics do you consider this early to be like important for you, and like how do you assess like whether this is worth or not to invest beyond the story? Like that's like the core part, but you know there's a business component, and you know it's important to understand that how do you assess those kind of situations?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, people look for pattern recognition. So I think you give us too much credit if we try to hyper assess things. Like, I've had success working with founders that are absolute lunatics in marketplaces. So that's primarily what I invest in, because I've seen the pattern work, right? Like, I have not had success in cryptocurrency and the ability to sell that to a broad population and through hedge funds. So like, you gotta look for pattern recognition on the delivery mechanism as well as the platform type, maybe even more than the industry. So that's just the way I look at it. I don't know if that answers your question exactly or not. It's like, it's not a super complicated answer, I guess is a good way to put it. Like, you know, like I said earlier, like, I care a lot about liking and wanting to work with the person. I'm going to put time into these deals. I want to make sure it's somebody I actually want to spend time with. And in that case, it's a little bit like dating. But in terms of the quality of the deal, I want to make sure I can add value, and it's something I have a mastery or at least a familiarity around.
Got it. And in terms of metrics, like any particular metric that you think like sparks your attention, or any number, or
Yeah, look, the most important thing is growth. And the second most important thing is that if you don't now, eventually you make money, and I believe those assumptions. It's growth and profitability. That's it. I want to see that what you're doing more and more and more and more. I want to know I can give you $1 and I can get 3 or 5 or 27 or 150. And I want to know how long it takes for that to grow. I want to be able to see a process that is repeatable, de-risked, synthesized into something that I can believe and trust. That's when this really starts end up getting good.
Super. Yeah, that's been super insightful, Jack. We're almost out of time, but I think it's been super insightful. We've been shooting from all over. Is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't touched so far, but you think is valuable for founders to know at this stage, at the state that they're at?
No, look, I think we covered a lot. I mean, I'm a friend of the fund, so if there is something specific, and you could be, excuse me, tolerant that, sorry, I got something in my throat. Tolerant of the fact that I give a lot of time away, so sometimes it takes me a while to respond. Obviously, assuming this cough doesn't kill me. Be specific and have some asks, and happy to help any way I can.
Okay, amazing, Jack. Thank you very much. So thanks for your time. Thanks for being again with us. Thanks for giving a lot of your time to each one of us and answering our questions. We really love how honest you're about everything, and it's been super insightful. Again, hopefully not a year from now, we're going to be able to have you here and have a beer, and who knows, have a great conversation.
It was great talking to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay. Have a great one.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Jack.
Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay.